Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Comfortable Being Uncomfortable. I always get that tongue tied for my own self, for my own podcast. And I just find myself always being wrong. I have my first guest here. I'm going to not butcher your name, but everyone knows that I don't spell anyone's name or say names correctly, but I'm going to do my best to try to get this one right. Let's see if I can break my record. I know how to say it, right? It's a stone that's very nice and it's beautiful, but for some reason I always get it wrong. But I'm gonna try this. A myth. Okay, I'm not gonna do it. Not gonna do it.
Amethysta.
Oh, Amethysta. See, I thought I was gonna break the record this time, so I apologize in advance. But that is a running joke that what makes me because A, I forget people's names, and B, I'm bad at pronouncing names and pronunciation. Can't even talk to that.
And that one's not even an easy one. So
no, but I love it. It's a beautiful name. What is your nickname?
I just go by Ami because it seems a little easier.
I like that. I can get Ami right.
Yeah, I figured. So,
well, Ami, thank you for being on our show today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. We met on Podmatch, which is one of the greatest kind of pod matching platforms that's out there. I'm not saying that's a sponsorship that I'm plugging Podmatch, but it's actually really great for you people out there who are in the podcast community. And we're going to talk a little bit about you and your background and really get to know more about kind of science, which I think is amazing that we have science, but also we don't really talk a lot about also women in science. So it'd be really great to talk about that from your experience and what you had to go through. We'll talk a little bit about gender inequality for someone who's actually clueless, who may not know and understand, which I think is really important. There's a lot of us out there, so it'd be great to kind of have that expertise on that because I know it's something you have in your background. Your journey and experiences as a transgender woman as well, which I think is something really important that we should discuss and talk about and really make awareness to people out there that realize it's not just Caitlyn Jenner out there in the world. There's a lot more people in the world that have gone through this and have had this happen. So it'd be great to hear that. And obviously the most important part, which I'm really looking forward to, is the importance of mental health and how awareness can help people in the LGBTQIA community, which I think we don't speak enough about that as well. So that's good topics we're going to talk about. So, well, first off, I just want to know, how has your February been so far? I mean, we're already in February 2024.
I know, and it's the 20th, so we only have 9 more days left of it.
Amazing, right? It's just crazy. And a leap year of all those things.
Right. I love leap years. So for what it's worth, the February has gone really dang well, especially given we have the 29th. For some reason, the 29th is always a special day to me anyway. I wanted to be born on it. I wasn't.
Funny enough, one of my friends was born on the 29th, and they celebrate their birthday every 4 years. I mean, they could celebrate the 28th, right, but they choose to do it every 4 years, which I think is kind of cool in a way. But I would think you want a birthday every year. But yeah, they're okay with that.
I want to know. At my age, I'm okay with not having a birthday every year.
And I'm over that. I think it gets to a point on birthdays. You think the point of for myself, I've always thought about turning 18, turning 21.
Right.
And as I've gotten older, I'm like, okay, if I'm I'm 41 now, but I was like, maybe I was in my late 20s, those were something important. And then your 30s came along and you're like, I just don't care anymore. If you have a party that's great, awesome. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't really care either way.
Agreed. Although I will say, not to preempt any conversation on mental health, what was not interesting to me, say, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, there's a big change in how I feel about celebrating my life today than there was, a couple of years ago before I transitioned. So
it's very true. Yeah, you have something more to celebrate and happen. So it's really great. I try to look at it as part of like I get older, and as a gay man, I think once you get past 40, you're either a zaddy or you're just someone's daddy. So it's one of the two. I think that's what happens to you. So I think I'm still in zaddy territory, so I'm okay with that, Brady.
I think
I can live
so.
with that. I can live with that. I can live with that. Anyway, and then go ahead and tell us a little about yourself and about what you've been really focusing on and working on, and the audience get to know you a little bit.
Sure. Oh gosh, let me see. I should have written an elevator pitch, but I didn't. So off the cuff. So I am Amethysta Herrick. I am a transgender woman. I have an educational background in biology, including genetics, and then ultimately finished a PhD in analytical chemistry. Then I went directly into a 25-year career in technology. But I transitioned gender in 2022. I was 52 years old at the time.
Sure.
And I felt so much better about myself, about my life, about the world, that I thought it was very important for me to write about it. And so I started writing about it. And today, not only do I publish, original thought and theory about identity and gender, I also love to talk about it. Why we are who we are, and what part, if any, society ought to play in it, which is why you and I are talking, because that's kind of an uncomfortable subject, depending upon what state you're currently in.
Preach.
Sorry, I was quicker elevator pitch than I thought.
No, it was good. I like that. Listen, sometimes you want to make it as quick as possible, but obviously, what is it about science that attracts you so much to this kind of genre of what you want to do? Like, what was it that really say, hey, I love science. I want to run with this. I want to make this happen. Mm-hmm. What was it for you in the scientific field that made you say, this is what I want to
do? That question goes to the real base of who I am, because who I am is somebody who always wants to know why. I want to know why about everything. When I was younger, I wanted to know why the sky was blue, why the sun rose every morning, why I was the way I was, why people didn't treat me the way I knew I was.
Yeah.
And I thought going into genetics actually was going to do that. And which, was my earliest education. I actually built a model of DNA when I was, 10th grade, 11th grade.
Wait, did you do it before they did it in Jurassic Park? Because that's how I learned about DNA.
Yes.
Okay.
It wouldn't have been before the book was published, but yes, certainly before Jurassic Park came out. So, but I always wanted to know why. And that's actually, worked very well for me through my entire career. Mm-hmm. As a graduate student, the point is you're going to do research. And since I wanted to know why, perfect.
Right.
And then when I went into technology, it served me extremely well there too, because if you have a problem, I want to know the real nuts and bolts of it, is in software is what I mean. So if we had a problem with a software system, I was always good at going in and finding out what the problem was to fix it. And believe it or not, that served me well as a manager as well. When I got to the point where I was managing other team members, and then ultimately I got into executive management, finding out why a business ran well was part of how I ended up, managing a team as well. So now when I think about my life and I'm writing about the transgender experience and about identity, I want to know why we are who we are. So, to sum that, to sum up and answer your question succinctly, I went into science because there's always a why, and I need to know what that why is.
Right. I think we always do that ourselves too. We always wonder why certain aspects of things happen, but there's also people who are just kind of like, it's fine where it is. I don't want to change
it. Oh, yeah.
Yes. But I think the inquisitive mind is always great. They say curiosity killed the cat, but then what was the cat actually doing to cause their death?
So though, the second half of that phrase, though, is satisfaction brought it back. So curiosity killed the cat, but he was so satisfied, came on back. I like to think of that as myself. I go down these rabbit holes and go, ooh, that was a bad rabbit hole. And then I wake up the next morning and go, dang, I'm glad I went down the rabbit hole. So
I
I'm
love
okay with
that.
it.
And then how has your kind of career been? Has your career been really great? I mean, has there been any pitfalls? Has there been a lot of back and forth? I mean, we talked about obviously where you live and
Right.
understanding that aspect, but how has that journey been for you in your career?
I have gone through many jobs. So, starting off in biology and then switching to chemistry and then switching to technology, it's clear that I'm not sure what I want to say, like, I don't apply myself, but I do obviously finish things.
Right.
And I've been successful as a technologist in large part because I am the one who can finish things.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I have to keep on moving. I believe, and I'm extemporizing here too, because I honestly, there's a lot of my career that I haven't bothered to investigate, since I retired.
Right.
Or retired from technology anyway. I think a lot of why I switched around from team to team and from technology to technology and product to product was in part because I always need new problems to solve. There's that. But I also want to identify myself through my job. That's been a long-standing problem of mine, that I don't see myself as Ami Herrick. I see myself as a software engineer, a manager, the person who's keeping this company afloat, whatever.
Right.
But this, I think, really plays into the struggles I've had with identity. So while I could be successful in my career, I think that I used my career as a prosthetic identity.
Right.
I think that's a good way of thinking of it.
That is a good way. And I think, you, as as a transgender person, do you think, on top of, as you talk about being in this field and being in such a, maybe a male, very dominated workplace
Yes.
or, career field, has there been any pitfalls that made you think that, do I want to still stick with this? Or, am I going to fight for this? Or, you know what? I'm not going to let. I mean, it's always you say, yes, I know I'll be proud of who I am, but like, do I want to be the poster child for that? Do I want to stand for that? When it's like, I really want to worry about the research and really these groundbreaking things you talked about with genetics and everything else. Like, that's how to be a constant thing you have to struggle with.
It is. I mean, I think it's kind of both. By one of the things that I do is I tend to believe in things so completely and give myself over to them so completely that I become a symbol of what it is I'm trying to do. And that served me extremely well as a manager. People were very glad to follow me because I could explain the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? Here's why. And it's a good reason. And people will go, dang, like, she really believes that. I'll follow her. Now that worked great when I looked down. I shouldn't use the word down, but when I looked to my own team, the team that I was on, whether they were peers or whether they were, people I managed, people I directed, it worked great then. But looking up was awful because typically the people to whom I reported were men. And even when I presented as a man, I didn't act like other men. Other men want, well, at least in technology, I'm not going to say in general, but at least in technology, these men needed to establish dominance. And all I cared about was solving problems.
Yeah. It was almost like you were a threat to them in a way. You were like, okay, she's, this person's coming in and they're, making all these changes and this, I mean, which I think happens in any job. I think we all could attest to that. You come in with great ideas, you come in with great tenacity to do well, but you're always threatening someone. So
yes.
Was that ever a
Yes.
hostile work environment for you ever?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh.
I was going to say I built that up, but I'm going to take that back. I'm not going to own that.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had a conversation with somebody recently where we were talking about advertising, and I swear this will come back together, but we were talking about advertising, and I said, yeah, I went into a store and I didn't find anything that fit me, and so I just left. I probably could have said something to him and maybe they'd change it, but that's really on me. I should have said something. And then I thought, no, wrong. Because if the brand wants to attract me, the brand has to attract me. It's not my job to go back to the brand and say, guess what? You have now lost me because you didn't do anything to make me want to be there.
Right.
And I think companies are the same. The reason why I've always been able to express a why for what I'm doing and for what a team is doing, where a product is going, is because that's what you need in order to go somewhere. So it's definitely been a challenge to have to come up against, people who were my superiors, people to whom I reported, who were more concerned about looking cool than finishing a product. Yes, I oftentimes represented a threat because there is. I think there are two ways to be successful, and one of them is, well, actually, this is summed up by a phrase. I think this is a military phrase: either to dazzle them with your brilliance or baffle them with bull crap.
Wow, that's a good way of looking
And
at that. I didn't know
I I think I typically dazzle people with my brilliance, maybe.
that.
And
Absolutely.
there were others who wanted to baffle the world with their bull. So when those two come up against each other, typically it's the ability that's going to win out. So
Right.
anyway, I was always a threat, and that always led to a toxic work environment that I could either own by saying I should have done something, or say no, what I did was my job, and they made it worse. So
Yeah. And it's kind of hard to be in that scenario too, because I've been in many work environments. I remember, oh God, I worked at Gap, and we
oh
know the
gosh,
stories of working at Gap.
yeah,
And like literally, it's stereotype of what I still think Kanye West's song, where it's like they put all the black people in the back, and I did. You
oh
don't think about,
gosh,
but like you don't think about it, but then you think about it now, and you're like, should I have said something back then? I mean, I was young, like
right,
it was a job,
right,
I made money. I
hmm
didn't really think much of it, but ideally, the process you went through, you're just kind of like, yeah, that was kind of fucked up when you think about it,
yes, yes,
and but you're like, I'm here to get a check, I'm here to make money, but at the same time, it all, if it goes unheard, how does anything get solved? And I think
right,
that you probably have to play with it a lot, feeling like, okay, if I don't, I guess, look, for me, I think of, am I setting an example for future generations to come, and what am I doing to kind of help along that process? Because I
right,
think we sometimes have to get out of our own heads, and then it's like, do I want maybe a family member of mine or a friend to go through that? Probably not. I'm okay to have gone through that myself, but do I want them to go through that? So I
yes.
wonder for you, like, was that such a struggle to think about, what you're setting, and this, in a way, almost trend setting, and kind of saying like, listen, I know I love my work, I know what I'm going through, but I want this to be somewhat easier for someone to come along the same way and have someone say, I look up to you. I want to be able to say, like, I can make these changes happen. And foreseeing that, I mean, in a way, does that kind of make you feel good knowing that the things that you've done and what you've done in your career has really hopefully opened up the doors for people like yourselves to come in and hopefully break down these barriers and to be able to appreciate it and be accepted for who they are, but also for the work they bring to the table?
That's a difficult question to answer. What I feel I did, there's really, really raw confession here. What
Mm-hmm.
I feel I did was quit, because as I transitioned, before I even did a social transition, I left technology
Okay.
and started writing. So to a certain extent, I feel like I left behind my brothers and sisters in technology to fend for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of it. When I look at the work that I do now, I like to think that it's at a level higher or maybe a level lower. I'm not sure exactly which direction the level goes, but it's at a place where it affects not just my brothers and sisters in technology, but it talks about humanity. I mean, I give it the phrase human activism, because I could stump for, I'm not sure the word I want to use. I could be an activist and say, let's make technology better.
Right.
Let's get more representation. Let's be more inclusive. Let's have women and LGBTQ community. Let's do this. And I would actually rather, believe it or not, do that at a level where society just naturally understands, we got to do that. Why would we have a technology company that does not include everybody? Why would we do that? So
Right.
I don't know how successful I am now or how successful I will be, but that is the mission I have to work toward. I have to work toward the idea that every human has this essential equality and this essential need to be acknowledged.
Yeah. And I think that goes into, our next topic, which is more gender inequality, which really talks about, you want to have this bigger scope of how to really help people understand this more. So, I think, coming from someone, I actually had this conversation with my mother, and, she came to me. She's part of the baby boomers. She's in her 60s, 65. And she's like, I took a class on learning about gender identity. And I said, okay, that's great. And I said, do you have questions about it? Do you, something you want to understand? She goes, I just don't get it. She was like, I don't. I said, okay, that's great. I said, okay, but what is it you don't get? She's like, well, I just don't want to mislabel someone. Now, my mom's not a bigot. She's not, any of those people. She's probably one of the most wonderful, open people, a lot, probably nicer than I am. But it's like, but she, she wants to understand, which I feel like from her generation, but maybe other people, it is that question of like, how do I approach this? How do I do this without being insensitive to someone or not mislabeling someone and not coming off like, oh, homophobic or you're this way? And it's like, I'm not. I just don't understand.
Yes.
How would you address someone who comes into that space and really is like, hey, I'm here. I don't understand what it means to be they or him, he, she. How would you even help someone really understand, to do that?
I think, oh gosh, it's a great question. And I actually I had the same conversation with a friend of mine, like having coffee about, I don't know, 5 hours ago. No kidding. What, a great way that I see to explain this, like right now, if I were to say, do you understand being a man? I think you'd say yes.
Sure.
Do you understand being a woman?
No.
Okay.
I have multiple sisters, but no, this does not make the same understand.
Sure. As far as the transgender experience goes, I don't really understand being a man. I always had a bad what's the word? I wasn't a good talent at playing a man. If we want to think of gender as a performance, my performance was generally not very good. Most people thought I was gay, and that I am not big in stature, nor particularly robust.
Right.
Helped play into that. So I didn't understand being a man very well, but I do understand being a woman. How? I'm not sure. The same way that you understand being a man. If we're going to, which is to say, it's ineffable, and we can go into where gender comes from later on. But if we were going to describe the non-binary experience, and for what it's worth, actually, I struggled with that for the longest time. Yeah. And at some point, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going, but if I understand being a woman, but I don't understand being a man, how can you not understand either? And I went, wait, no, that actually explained it right there. While I don't understand being a man, and I do understand being a woman, and you understand being a man, but don't understand being a woman, a non-binary person goes, yeah, I don't really see either. The ability to perform that role.
Yeah.
And I think it's unfortunate that much of the rhetoric around gender comes from ultimately somewhat of a scientific and social dogmatism.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that your chromosomes end up defining so much of psychology and behavior.
Right.
But that dogmatism, I think, is really what makes this difficult. We understand our gender typically implicitly. And if you can ask somebody if you can say, well, what gender do you understand? And they say, I understand gender X, whatever it is. And you go, so you don't understand this? And they go, no. Then you can say, this is what I understand, just flip-flopped around. And then a non-binary person just doesn't see either.
Right.
So I don't know that it's exactly the most elegant way of thinking about that, but it really, at least for me, brought home what non-binary went. And you'd think I might have like a clue on what non-binary meant as a transgender woman, but I don't.
Right.
I
don't think
still
anyone.
really.
I think it's
Sorry,
hard.
go ahead.
No, I'm
Yeah.
saying I think it's very hard because I think it's, and as you talk about this, it's an individual experience. I had a
Yes.
friend that she went through the process of a day, and I said, okay, if that's what you want to go by, I'm totally okay with that. But and
Yeah.
then she said she wanted to be called she, and I said, ideally, whatever you feel comfortable with, I'm okay. I may get it wrong, I may mess up a little bit here and there, but feel free to correct me. It's not me intentionally mislabeling you, but it's me maybe being uneducated, but also just making sure that I come from a world where it's like it was just a boy and girl, but then there's also the level we talk about sexuality. Like you have to be gay, you have to be straight, you have to be, bisexuality doesn't exist. I mean,
Right.
like everybody has their own journey when it comes to that. You can never tell
Yes.
someone that they have to fit into a box and do that. But I think within our own community, we have a hard time doing that as well because as much as we have so many
Yes.
letters, which I have nothing against that, it's a mouthful, but it's, do we really acknowledge every aspect of the letters in that, LGBTQ? I mean, I know we're trying to, but then
Right.
do we really accept it in our community? Are they really fully accepted in that aspect?
No, I
Yeah.
don't believe so. The reason why I will say no, and I said it pretty quickly,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
The reason why I don't is because we continue to worry about labels like lesbian or gay or bisexual or transgender, cisgender, intersex, asexual. Why do these mean anything to us? Why are the labels so definitive of our experience?
Right.
Because they're not. I mean, I've identified as bisexual for 30 years. But really that just meant that I picked up the label because it was actually, well, it wasn't quite 30 years. It would have been like summer of 19 whatever that is, 94. I was a chemist, not a mathematician.
But the 90s were amazing.
Oh my gosh, I learned so much in the 1990s about myself.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Going through the exploration of, do I like men? Do I like women?
Right.
I mean, I remember waking up one day and going, you know what? I like men and women. And I gave myself the label and suddenly I felt better about myself.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know. I think it makes no sense. Why must we label people?
That's such a good question. And we're probably at the same crosspath this where it's like I used to think it's because society wants to put you into a box.
Yes.
We think about to the census, and I hope this is changing. I don't have any factual information on this, that the U.S. Census or any census in general is really being inclusive of all people. because
Yes.
not everyone could fit into those boxes. I mean, remember back in the day, I think if you were biracial, you had to pick one or the other, but you might have come
Oh
from both
gosh.
races and you had to,
Yeah.
that's something that part of your identity and who you are, but you had to
Right.
pick one or the other. So
Right.
I feel
Right.
like when it comes to gender equality, I'm hoping that that change happens, but I do think our society wants to put you in a label and they want to
Hmm.
put you into this box of who you are. But I'm I have seen smallly, and I think even with maybe the younger generation, that those labels are starting to diminish a little bit. I think they're starting to speak up a little more and
I think
say
so.
they're not, oh, I'm queer now, which
Right.
as an older gay man, I'm like, okay, does it mean you like men? Does it mean you like women? I don't really know. Like, I don't know. But then I have to sit and ask these kids today and be like, okay, this is what it really means. I'm exploring whatever cases be, and which we maybe didn't have the freedoms to do those things back in the day. But nowadays, it's a little becoming more accepting to do that. But I still feel
Right.
like it's hard because I personally, in my mind, still am like, well, you need to maybe pick a box. But now I'm like, no, maybe you don't need to pick a box. If you're
Right.
happy and you're not hurting anyone, then I think you're okay doing
Right.
whatever is best for you. And as long as you're honest with the
Agreed.
person or partner that you're with, it shouldn't matter at that point, because you have this open level of communication. But I
Right.
think a lot of times we don't think like that. And especially if you look in the Bible Belt, nothing against the South,
Yeah.
you know, the good Lord's Bible, that's the King's shame. That's what you're supposed to go by. And
Of course.
it's like, if you read the Bible, you realize there's a lot of like shit in there that's like pretty wrong, but
Yeah. Oh,
we
sure.
gloss over that. We want to hit the
Hmm.
topics of like, you need to get married, you need to do this. I
Right.
make a I make a very funny joke to my friends where it was one of the, I believe it's one of the commandments. It says, "Thou should not cover thy neighbor's wife." I said, "But what about the husband?" We didn't think about
Oh
that, now did
gosh.
we?
Yeah.
In
That's
a day,
awesome.
right? But it's like these are the things. I know we have commandments, we have things, we have laws, and we have rules and regulations, but all that stuff goes out the window after a while because at the end of the day, if you're living your truth and you're being happy and you're being your well self, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter at all.
It it should not matter. And I will actually, there is clinical evidence that if you live your truth, I'm saying clinical evidence. Let me actually back this up a little bit. There was an existential psychologist, and I'm going to use that phrase, and I'm guarantee there's some psychologist out there right now who's going to go, "Oh God, really?"
Just ready. I'm like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, but there was an existential psychologist. His name was Rollo May. He's now passed on, but in the 1960s, he has some clinical, how do you put this? He had some patients. A patient who comes in and says, "Oh my gosh, Dr. May, I hate gay people. I want to punch them every time I see it. I just want to. Oh God,
Jesus.
I cannot stand them." And Rollo May says, "Wow, think about that. Go home and think about, is that who you are? And we'll talk about it next week." And some other, that guy goes home. I don't know how close they were, but there was another patient who comes in and goes, "God, Dr. May, I think I might be gay, but I really, really don't want to be gay because people are going to hate me and want to punch me in the face." And Rollo May was probably like, "Oh, actually, he just missed him. Good thing." No, but he says, "Well, think about that. Is that who you are? And consider that." And so both of the people come back. I'm telling this story way too long. Both of the people come back, and the first guy says, "I thought about that, and I realized if that is who I am and I live that, then I have to allow other people to live what they do too. Because I've thought about it, and I want to be that person. But if I'm going to do that, then I have to allow other people to be the person they are." This is
Right.
an interesting example that there was a guy who was really kind of a jerk and said, "Yeah, I'm going to continue being a jerk." But because he thought about, I need to be this jerk, he actually thought other people should be capable of doing the same, should have the right to do the same. And it was the exact same with a guy who came back who said, "Yeah, I thought about it, and it turns out I'm gay, and that's fine. Because I am secure in who I am, I really don't care if somebody hates me
Yeah,
because I
absolutely.
am who I am, and that's okay if other people, are who they are. The point being, now that I've taken 70 years to tell the story, that Rollo May ended up writing a book called Love and Will, and this
Mhm.
is one of the big lessons in it, that when we investigate who we are, not only do we find out who that is and feel better about ourselves, we realize that this is a process each of us must go through. And as a result, we're much more willing to allow people to do that themselves, and to come to their own conclusions rather than hating them without any other provocation. So it's an interesting, I'm trying to remember what the hell topic we were talking about before I told the story. Was it a good one? I hope. I don't.
It's good. We're talking about gender inequality. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think you're totally right. I, and it goes back to the fact of the unknown. I think people, and this is throughout history, people
Yeah.
are always scared of the unknown. They're always scared
Yes.
of the fact of things they don't know, things they can't
Yes.
control, things they
Right.
cannot understand. And then when you understand something, your opinions change. You
Right.
know, I
Fear
remember
goes away.
a friend of mine. I actually, they were a drag queen,
Mm.
and they had went to doing shows in the South, which I'm always queens who do shows in the South. I'm like, man, I got to give you props because
I
that's a
did.
yeah. I'm giving your props too because like that, I mean, in a place where I'm not saying all the South is bad. I'm trying to refrain
No.
myself saying that, but it's in a place where it's not as open as, and me coming from living in
Yes.
California or New York or what the case is in these big, very liberal cities,
Right.
it's got to
Right.
be hard. But then think about the impact you probably had on some young person's life by just doing that. And I'm not saying it's easy at
Maybe.
all. I don't think it's easy at
Maybe.
all. But I
Yeah.
think that's got to be so amazing to be able to stand that truth and do that and be able to still uh, live in your truth and do that,
Yeah.
which I know is
You know
hard. It's hard.
what's amazing though? I think, believe it or not, I think the attitude in the South has gotten worse.
Really?
Yeah, because it would have been at the very least 1995. It would have been about 95 or so
Mm-hmm.
that I was doing either drag karaoke or drag, like the standard lip syncy
Right.
drag shows.
Lipstick for your life. Sorry, it's my favorite
Yes,
line.
there you go. Absolutely perfect.
Right.
And by the way, RuPaul is actually from Atlanta, right? I
Not true.
always wanted to end up meeting them, and I never got the chance. I knew people who knew, because this was 95, right? RuPaul was not like a huge thing. So
Right.
I always wanted to meet them, but I never got the chance. So anyway, the point is just that, it feels like I was able to express myself the way I did, but if I were to go there now, it would actually be worse. I
Mm.
find it hard to believe that we could have slid backward. Oh, you know what though? Can I ask you a question? Because I'm curious.
Sure.
Um, you said you were your early 40s. You said, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
was okay. Do you remember the time the queer was a pejorative term?
I don't.
Okay.
Now you're making me think. I know it's became more mainstream now because it was
Yes.
always one of the other words, and that was that. But no, I don't remember that,
Right.
Attila.
Okay. Because I mean, I remember growing up, people would say, because I mean, what is the I cannot think of the movie. Is it like Deliverance, where somebody says the only thing from Texas is beers, steers, and queers? I'm trying. I'm
It's a good
really
line. I think that line sounds familiar. Yeah.
you okay? I'm
Yeah.
butchering the line. That same psychologist. He was like, "Oh God, existential psychology is doing the same." You don't even know the movie. Don't quote it.
Get your stuff together.
Right. You are the worst guest ever. But it used to be pejorative, and the first time it was, and it's only been recent that somebody said, "Yeah, those of us in the queer community," and I went, "Ooh, don't, wow." I was like, "You don't have to be mean about it," and the person's like, "What are you talking about?" And I go, "That's sort of, I mean, you may as well use like a racial slur. What are you doing?" And the
Mm,
person goes, "No, no, 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 no. We reclaimed it. Now it's okay to be
change that.
queer. It's
Right.
cool." And I was like, okay. but I still, every time I hear it, I have this little twinge where I kind of go, really?
It gets you. Yeah.
It does a little bit.
I could totally understand that because it's almost in this age of wokeness, which I'm all for, but it gets to a little degree where it's a little much. But I do, but I do think it's the fact of like, it's great to understand that, and at least hopefully we're teaching our generations that it's okay to understand these things. I mean, it's crazy enough. I don't know how you feel about maybe people you talk to, but obviously people are still using, fag as reclaiming it. And I'm like, which we know for years has been a very derogatory, awful thing to say to anyone.
Yes.
But now all of a sudden, it's okay to say again, and I'm just like, wait, I don't. So I guess that worked for me. It was queer for you. I feel like fag for me is like one of those words. I'm like, that was probably the worst thing you call someone who was gay. And now it's like, it's okay. With my girlfriends, it's okay. It's okay with my guy friends, it's okay. But I'm like, I don't know. Because I'm like, I just feel like it's still wrong. I don't hate anyone that uses it. You do what you need to do. But I mean, I just remember it just being such a horrible word to say. And now it was like, hate it. I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Now it's cool.
Now it's cool. We made fag cool. I don't know how that happened.
It's the labels. It's a crazy, to me, it's a crazy thing how labels end up meaning so much. You had started going down the road of woke, and sometimes it can go a little far.
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting now. I'll meet somebody in the community, somebody I don't really know, and I'll say, so tell me a little bit about yourself. And the first thing they do is rattle off this string. I mean, I think the most I saw was a good 8 labels. Because there was the I'm going to make this up, but it was like non-binary, trans femme, aromantic, asexual, demi-girl. And I'm like, I don't like, what does this mean?
Like, okay.
and I stopped and I went, okay, listen, like, thank you. I mean, I appreciate that because now I have some words to go look up. But who are you? Like, tell me about yourself. I think
people forget that. I'm with you on that. I feel like people forget the fact of it's like, okay, I'm Dak. I'm a gay man. Great. But I love writing. I love traveling. I love what the case is. That's fine. I mean, I think you should obviously, accept yourself and understand the gender that you are or how you feel. But at the same time, it shouldn't be your only talking point. Incorporate it, obviously. Don't feel ashamed of it. No, of course not. But bring more to the table about yourself. But I also think that's a suppression that I've been working on myself, is to be like, it's okay to talk about yourself. It's okay to talk about, because I think in the past we've been told, no, don't talk too much about yourself. Sit there, look quiet. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. And it's like, I'm a little pretty prince or princess. And it's like, no, now it's like, it's okay to do it. But then you're like, what do you want to know? What do you want me to talk about? But I think it's a balance. I think once you get that, understand that balance and that level of communication, which I think is faltering in our public school systems, and I think in just society in general, because we hide behind a text or a phone or technology, it's hard to do that. And I think mediums like this and podcasts and get on my little soapbox is like, it's a way to be able to connect again with people on such a more human level that I think we are sadly getting away from.
When that person finished rattling off the words and I said, can you tell me about yourself?
Deer in the headlights.
They were surprised. It was like, wait a minute, you want something more than that? And I'm like,
yes.
Yeah, because that kind of told me, for what it's worth, like, fuck all. I mean, I've got words. Tell me about you. And I agree. I think much of what our society does now is say, well, don't tell us about yourself. There's like this, it's a weird extreme of either, oh God, I just want to like segregate everybody who isn't just like me off to wherever. I don't know. I'm pushing him somewhere.
A Rand Island somewhere. I mean, let's be honest. They did that to the British convicts, and that was Australia. But
how did that work out?
Yeah, exactly. Right? All right, let's talk about that.
So we just want to push them away. Or there's the other extreme where it's like, well, I've got to go. You're not going to hear my name. What you're going to hear is my entire pedigree of everything I've ever thought. And social media really fosters this, where you can go on Twitter, or I guess I haven't been on Twitter in a while, but like Blue Sky, Mastodon,
I'm
Facebook,
sorry, I just have to
whatever.
update you on me. It is called X. We are supposed to call it X.
Oh, God damn it! Wait. You don't mean to say that dead naming should be wrong?
I mean, I should not be saying it. See, we're going through this again. It's another level we're going through. It's like Elon Musk. Fuck off. Like, I don't know why he decided to change it to X. That's the dumbest thing in the world. But that's my only rant. I'm like, what? But really?
But isn't it a phenomenal point? Because Elon Musk wants to keep dead naming his transgender child, and forgive me, transgender child, I don't know much about you, but Elon Musk wants to dead name his child. But you call X Twitter, and that's wrong. What are you doing, man? That's crap.
I cannot stand him. Yeah, I know. It seems crazy.
It seems crazy. Names are important. What a surprise.
Well, leading to our you're welcome. Our next topic, which I really love to learn more about, is your journey and experiences being a transgender woman. So kind of walk us through, as much as you want to share, kind of your journey of how you got to where you are today and living your full truth and being hopefully the happiest you've ever been in your life.
Gosh, I was asked a question a few weeks ago. When was the first time you knew you were transgender? Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's generally like two extremes on this one too. There's always two extremes, where people who go, yeah, I don't know, I was like 4 years old. And then there are people who said, well, I was diagnosed by like a psychologist a couple of years ago.
Right.
And I don't personally, I don't understand. There's a word for this. It was LST. So it's light switch transgender. But you get diagnosed and you go, oh God, is that what that meant all along? Oh, light switch went off.
Jesus. Okay. All right.
I am one of those people so I grew up with three sisters, and my father was pretty absent. He's now, left his body, so he's really absent, but I thought
for those who don't know, your father is gone, passed on to the next life. Actually, I never heard that used before, so I'm going to have to use that now.
Left his body? Oh.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be a funny thing to say, and then I was like, God, I'm making a joke about my dad's death.
Listen, death is only the beginning.
Right.
No. It happens. It's life. We all have to end at some point,
Right.
It's part of life.
So I grew up with three sisters, and I would say that my socialization is the word we like to use for this. My socialization was actually as feminine as I probably could have asked for. And I was actually kind of confused by the time I was about 8 years old, going, wait, I do appear different and people do treat me differently. Why is that? And then I hit puberty and everything just went to hell in a handbasket. It was really, honestly, some of the worst years of my life.
Right.
But I knew then there was a joke. Nobody I know has heard this joke, but there was a joke in the early 80s, I think, somebody taking a Swedish vacation.
Okay.
That ever doesn't ring a bell? Okay.
No.
I think Sweden had just perfected or had opened up healthcare for gender reassignment surgery.
Okay. I think I may have heard this. Okay.
So the joke was, you take a Swedish vacation, you go away as John and come back as Joanne or something. That was the joke.
Now I get it. Okay.
And I remember being like 12 years old going, oh, dang, is that all I have to do? How much does it cost to get to Sweden? Right. I'm like, this is a snap, and then everything will be right.
Right.
But I obviously I didn't go to Sweden. But when I was 12 anyway. I mean, I still haven't been there. I don't know where this is going. Forget Sweden. But
lovely country,
I went
here. But yes.
Oh, I'm sure. Sorry, Swedes. I didn't. That was not. Remember Sweden. Just don't remember it until the podcast is over. Okay.
Make sure you visit Sweden. That's not a sponsorship. Just saying, Sweden.
Right.
Switzerland's amazing.
Neither is Podmatch. Podmatch
yes.
Also. We're not endorsing it. Not endorsing Sweden.
No.
So, in any event, I really wanted to do that, and I knew very well by about 12 years old I was going to transition in some way, whatever that meant. And I, at 12 years old, I had no idea. I thought it was going to be simple.
Right.
So by my teenage years, early teenage years, I was dressing in my sister's clothes. By the time I was an undergraduate, I was dressing in my girlfriend's clothes. It's
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason she broke up with me.
Is it because you both were running for prom queen? Sorry.
No, she.
Could you imagine?
That would have been. I think that would have been great. I would have loved that, but no. She said I stretched out her dress, and candidly, I don't know if that's true.
That's she's probably more worried about.
Right. She's like, oh gosh, I stretched out my dress. I'm gonna blame you though.
Right.
What are you doing wearing my dress? I'm breaking up with you. And then I'm taking my dress with me, and I'm gonna go lose 20 pounds so I fit back in it again. Damn you. But so anyway, girlfriends and everything. I knew I was going to do this. I was dressing up. By the time I went to graduate school, I went from California, right? Mm-hmm. And then I was living in Georgia. And I had no friends, no family. I had nothing. So I'm like, God, I can make whatever identity I want. And so I did.
Isn't that so true for people? Like, you can just go to a whole new place. I mean, I think I went through that. Actually, to not inject your story, but when I had my coming out experience was I went to the most happiest place in the world called Disney World.
Disney. Nice.
So if you're going to find yourself, I think the most magical place in the world might be the place to do that. But you had a chance, like you said, to reinvent yourself and find your own tribe and start something new. And yeah, I totally agree with that. I totally identify with that. Yeah.
And I leaned into it. I had a name. I had a look. My hair was waist length. This is a little shorter now, but it was waist length. It was dyed black. I had grown up with 3 sisters, so I was familiar with makeup and clothes and fashion. And so I integrated myself as the name I used was Selena. That's my middle name now.
Okay.
But I integrated myself into a scene there of other transgender women. And as the chemistry graduate community, I'm not sure what I wanted to use there, but other graduate students were kind of like, you are really from California because you are so weird. And they just kind of wrote off anything I did. They're like, well, yeah, but
that
don't
came
forget.
First. So your identity was this place you grew up. That came first. Mm-hmm.
Do you know that's half the reason why I leaned into being Selena? I was having a discussion, believe it or not, about the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh,
so you'd think,
love that movie.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, I know. But you'd think the people I was talking to were like relatively accepting type people.
Right.
When I was in Georgia, when I first got there, my hair was blonde because my hair is naturally blonde. Mm-hmm. And for what it's worth, just to go on for a moment, beautiful. Okay. It was, the California blonde with the gold and the, it's curly.
God,
and I mean,
you were Katy Perry's California girl.
I was absolutely. Even in California, people would come up and go, God, who does your hair?
Right.
It's truly amazing. And I'm like, nobody. That's natural.
Lovely.
Maybe I'm born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline. No, fucker. God. I was born with it. Speaking of being catty there. But so anyway, somebody on this Rocky Horror Picture Show, like Usenet group said, you know what? I have 2 words for you. Go home, surfer boy. And I went, oh my God. You think I'm a surfer? The thing that hurt me was being associated with surf. I mean, I grew up in Los Angeles. Like Bill and Ted were my people, like literally my people. And I went, no. I mean, neither of them was a surfer, by the way, but that whole community, I'm like, no, I am not one of those. And then I started dyeing my hair, and then I dyed it black. And then I was like, actually, this looks pretty dang good. And thought I'd start wearing makeup and leaned into being Selena. Wow. Let me actually scoot forward like 30 years because it's
okay.
I've suffered with mental health my whole life. Graduate school was very difficult. I ended up ultimately being diagnosed with what's now called schizoaffective disorder. Okay. I've had previous psychologists say, well, you have something like a multiple personality disorder, which is now, the non politically correct term to use. Mm-hmm. But I never got help. And it's interesting because I didn't get help because I would go to mental health professionals who would say, so let me get this straight. So you have all of these symptoms, but like you're holding down a normal job, you went through graduate school, you have like a relationship, you seem too highly functional for these symptoms actually to present. Like you can't really have both at once. And I went, well, so what are we going to do? And they're like,
Right.
pretty much nothing, I guess. Good luck. Go home. Your symptoms don't seem real.
Isn't that crazy? The people you go to for help to help you with these diagnoses, and this is not the whole community, but I think it's just crazy how we don't do enough to really help and understand these things and realize what it's like once again, we're going back to the whole theory of fit into a box. It's like, oh, but you got a job, you're working, you're fine, this and that. So you don't have any issues. Like, no, things still happen. Like you still are having these diagnoses, you still having these feelings. Like just because you're doing great, which is amazing, nothing wrong with that, doesn't mean you should be treated for the things that are happening.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is weird. I have a term for this, which is the pathologization of being human. Is that a term, a phrase, whatever? I gave it a label, and the label is to imply that you have to have the label of pathology in order actually to be treated for anything. And to a certain extent, it's like, why can we just trust people? Look, I feel depressed. And they go, well, have you been depressed for 2 weeks straight with a certain level of, have you been able to sleep? Do you eat? And if you go, well, I don't check enough boxes, they go, oh, sucks to be you, go home. You're fine, magically cured. And it's like, no, I'm still feeling like hell. What am I? So to speed this up at least a little bit, in 2001, I got divorced. My first wife, by the way. I just want to, after I
first wife, what are you, Elizabeth Taylor? You had like 4 of them?
Yes, seven I have.
7?
No,
jeez.
I'm Henrietta the Eighth. Is what I am. It's
okay.
No,
multitudes.
Yes, my I told you my first girlfriend broke up with me because, she says I stretched out my dress.
Okay.
I started dating this woman who said, oh, honey, don't worry about, being in the community. All the best of us are. And I am pretty confident that when I dressed up as Selena, she looked at me and went, oh, damn. Well, I don't want to be shown up by my, like, I think I was prettier than she was. Even if this isn't true, I'm still using this excuse. I'm going to, I don't even, because it might be false, but let's just pretend it's true.
So go with that.
Yeah, I don't know where I was going. Oh, sure. So I was getting divorced. And I said, I'm going to transition. All right. And I told the woman who is actually now my wife, we had been dating for about a year. This was 2001. I said, I'm going to do this. And she said, yeah, okay. And I thought, was that going to, I don't know. But I went and I started looking at the process. And I don't remember if it was 2 or 3. I think I held up 4 fingers. I don't know. Again, chemist. No. But I looked into the process and I needed either 2 or 3 psychiatrists to evaluate me. And then I'd have to live as my preferred gender for a year. And if I passed those gates, then I could begin hormone therapy. And I think I needed a year or 2. I think it's 2 years on hormone therapy before I would be eligible for gender reassignment surgery.
Is that the process still to this day, or has that changed over time? Okay.
No, it's much easier now. Okay. When I knew I was going to have to talk to psychiatrists, for lack of a better way of saying this, I just folded. I went, okay, then I'm never going to be able to.
Based off your past experience, it's like they're just going to look at you and say you're fine, and that's it, and not even consider anything else. Yeah.
They might even go, well, you've had like relationships with women, so how could you possibly be a woman yourself? Despite the fact that I've also had relationships with men. So I don't know, but that's beside the point, apparently. So I let it sit, and my mental health continued to spiral somewhere, anywhere. But Our son was born in 2011. A phenomenal kid, such an amazing kid. And if we have time, I'll tell you about him. But I said to myself, though, when we went to that ultrasound, because I remember the ultrasound, my father had 4 sisters. Look, I actually got 4 fingers out. My father had 4 sisters. I have 3. I was pretty dang confident. I'm going to have a girl, right? It's the genetics.
Right.
Doesn't actually, there's no proof for that. But I was totally sure I'm going to have a daughter. And I remember the ultrasound tech goes, and look, there's a little penis. I'm a boy. And I went, oh, crap. And I went home and I remember writing in my journal going, what the hell am I going to do? Because I was going to live my girly life out through my daughter.
Right.
Now what? So instead, what I did is I said, okay, I'm going to have a son. Sons need fathers. Fathers are men. Anything vaguely transgender, I packaged up and I wrapped it up really tightly so I could throw it over my shoulder and forget it ever occurred.
Right.
And I'm sure you know enough about mental health to know that didn't happen.
No, sadly no.
Yeah. So at the end of 2021, I had my 5th trip to the psychiatric ward. The first time I got sent home, which was, I thought of that as progress, you know. Try to see
something.
try to see the positive. I
Right.
didn't spend any time, you know, they let me go home. I wasn't involuntarily committed, and like that's grand, okay?
Okay. Yeah.
But my wife says, listen, I think you need to consider your gender identity. And I thought, ooh, that means transition, and I don't think I can do that. But I thought about it until about May of 2022. And I remember crying to my wife and saying, I just really want to transition. And she said, all right, we'll go do it. And I looked at her and I said, you would let me do this? And she goes, no. I'm not letting you do anything. You need to let yourself do that.
Word.
And I probably cried even more. I'm misting up, you know, just telling the story.
Amazing.
Because I started hormone therapy, which, by the way, the process now, if you're over 18, depending upon what state you're in, and that's actually that's obviously very important. But if you're over 18, all I had to do was say, I have been informed of possible side effects, and I consent to receiving a prescription. The end. It's called informed consent. And that's all it took for me to get a hormone, you know, an estrogen prescription. And I will tell you, within 2 weeks, I don't have a good way of describing it. I realized that I was feeling emotions. And I know, you know, there are probably normal people out there, I'm going to put that in quotes, normal people going, yeah, Amy, we feel emotions. Did you know that? No, I didn't. What I knew was the emotion anger. I knew either anger or nothing.
Yeah.
And I started experiencing these emotions. And I went, you've got to be kidding me. Is this what I've missed for 52 years? I also started experiencing physical pain, which, you know, that one's a bit of a bummer. But so the last almost 2 years now have been absolutely the best years of my life. Absolutely. There have been times in the last 2 years where, because see, one of the things that I realized after I'd sort of conquered this major pain of gender dysphoria, we sort of peeled that big, huge, it was a very thick skin of the onion, I guess, pulled that back. And I went, this is great. For the rest of my life, I'm going to be absolutely perfect. And then I realized, oh gosh, wait, there's a whole lot of childhood trauma that I've never been capable of processing because it's been covered up. And so 2023 had some very rocky patches. And I guess I'm happy to report that by 2024, I think I've at least reached the ability now to process all of my emotions, process all of my trauma, process, experiences that have occurred now, running into my 54th year. I can't imagine going back. It would kill me.
Yeah.
Flat out.
And that's just an honest answer to have. And I think we are so afraid to talk about those things because it's almost like, I think if I tried to be straight, I would not be happy. You. It would not be, it'd be nothing. I wouldn't meet the partner I have today. I wouldn't make the friends I had. I wouldn't just be my authentic bitchy self, So, and I'm happy for that. And I'm glad for that.
Exactly. But to bring it back to Rollo May, just so that particular story doesn't sit there dying on the vine.
Right.
Now that I've been able to express the person I knew I was all along, oh, I am so much happier. And I've been able to figure out things like non-binary. And I've been able to figure out where to get compassion for people who, want to shiv me in a dark alley. Yeah. It's not a lot of compassion, but it's certainly more compassion than I might have had.
I mean, I think that's one of the other things we have to worry about. I could think about someone being homophobic. I could think of someone having a different opinion, but it's more of like, if we keep shunning and hating these people, it's not going to change anything. It's only going to make it worse. It's going to make it grow. Right. And so ideally, it's okay to have a different opinion. I actually have a girlfriend that I talk to, and we had like a fireside. I mean, we were a little drunk, but we had like a fireside drunk conversation, which I think sometimes are the best conversations. Let's be honest. Like, you get some real truth sometimes. And, she grew up in the South and she didn't stand homosexuality. I mean, her best friend was gay. And, I was friends with him, and she says, I just don't understand it. She's like, she says, I fear my kids being this way. And I'm like, well, what do you fear? Do you fear them just being themselves? Like, what? She's like, no, I fear that I can't protect them. I fear that I can't be a good parent and stop them from feeling isolated or hurting themselves or hurting others. Yeah. And I thought, and I didn't never think it from that point. I said, I've never been a parent. I mean, I had nieces and nephews and, but I never thought of it that way because I felt like maybe that's how my mom probably felt. That it's not about you being yourself, but as a parent, how do I protect you and make sure you are safe being who you want to be? And I'm so glad seeing parents today really having these conversations with themselves and their kids and being like, this is a thing. It's not about hate. Yeah. It's not about understanding. It's the fact that you want to think about protecting your children and not protecting them from obviously protecting them from themselves, but also protecting them from their world, because this world today is just, it's fucked.
It's a little mean. It's kind of a lot mean. Yeah.
A whole more mean, So it was so great to understand it and see that. And this leads us to our last topic, which is about the importance of mental health and how, this can help. I mean, you obviously have went through your struggles with mental health and, your struggles, but ideally, what has been maybe something that's been very helpful for you, whether it be therapy or whatever things you do for yourself to really help you kind of balance it, or maybe kind of find a common ground of being okay with where your mental health is and getting that help?
There are two major practices that I credit with much of the mental health I've experienced today. And I'm saying that slightly ironically, but not, because I mean, I still have ups and downs, but
sure.
The two practices, one of them is meditation.
Okay.
It's very difficult. I think it's very difficult to, what am I trying to say? Many people say, well, meditation, I just can't do it. I've got too busy of a mind. And that's kind of the point. The more you practice it, the more you learn how to slow that down. It's not easy. I'm not going to even pretend like it's easy. And I'm not going to say that every time I go to meditate, I have this perfect experience where the universe opens up and there's choirs of whatever singing for me.
Whatever your religion is, whatever you feel.
Whatever it is, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pagan, so I don't know. It's like choirs of fairies. Let me just go with this. It's like choirs of fairies flitting down and singing for me. No. But at the same time, it's part of what has trained me to gain some equanimity, and whatever that might be. The other big practice that I think has been very, very useful for me is just journaling. I mean, it's usually the people who go, I couldn't sit down and meditate because I have too many thoughts in my head. Those same people tend to go, wait, journaling? I have nothing to talk about, nothing to write about.
Man.
Well, what about all these thoughts that you have in your heads, so that you can't meditate? Oh, yeah, but those are stupid thoughts. Right. And that's why you write them down, because it forces you, at least in my experience, I believe it forces you to enunciate's not the term I want to use, but it makes you put the feelings you have into words.
Yeah.
And putting them into words means that you understand yourself better. It's a great tool for introspection, is my opinion. Journaling, I mean, because I don't think meditation is. There are ways you could use meditation as introspection, but so journaling and meditation are my two. Those are the two big things. Just to try to, because it's kind of like, oh yeah, is that good?
Is that it? That's it?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, everybody says that. Good on you, right? Well,
right.
So in 2000, gosh, when did this? So in 2015 was the first time I went. I was 35. It was the first time I went to. No, I was 45. So this was 2005. Sorry. Anyway, I was 35 years old, 34, I think, when I was first involuntarily committed. It took that long before I could get any help, and it only happened because I, content warning people here, I was doing a lot of self-harm. And my fiance at the time called the cops and said, I'm kind of afraid. I mean, there's blood going on here. Come pick this person up, take care of her. So I got that diagnosis, and they gave me medications, and I thought, oh, medications are going to be great. Everything will be solved. And really what it did was not great. Yeah. And so between 2005 and 2000, about 13, I was just on medications, and really it didn't manage much of my problem. I guess it managed symptoms. Right. But I said to myself, I can't get better because I'm on, I'm these medications. I think medications are phenomenal for short-term management, so that you can get to a point where you can say, okay, now I have to do something else.
Right. And
what I did was start meditating. I started running. I started writing in a journal purposely, as opposed to before it was kind of disjointed.
Right.
And by 2000, it was about a year and a half later, I got off of all medications. Wow. My psychiatrist, when I went to him, I said, listen, I'm going to get off of these. And he went, people like you don't get off these medications. People like you take these medications
like excuse
all their life. Yes. I went, I did. I went, oh, people like me. Now for sure I'm getting off these medications. You'll see. And he went, okay, let's see. And a year and a half later, I'm walking out the door, and he shakes my hand. He says, you know what? If I didn't see it, I wouldn't have believed it. Because people like you, and I went, I know. People like me, we don't get off medications, do we? And he went, all right, well, Godspeed, or something like that. And I walked out the door, and I'm like, yeah.
Hair toss. I love that.
Right. And my hair was probably short at the time, but it was.
But you know what? You're feeling good as hell.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
And so, mental health, ultimately, I don't think that I could improve until I really, really decided I had to. And it's been the same with gender transition. Until I really, really believed I had to do it, I was just gonna suffer. And that is the lot in life of so many of all of our brothers and sisters.
So many. Yeah. And sometimes they wait too late to get the help they need. And this is why I always stress there are communities, there are places to go. And obviously I always put a link in the podcast that it's important to do that, because even for myself, it was very hard,
It was,
but I also think, if I didn't get the help or kept therapy, and my story is almost a fact of like, I lost both of my fathers. So I had my father, I had my stepfather. And, my father committed suicide. I talked about this before. And it was kind of like, is that my fault? Did I do something about that? But it's more about, I think it was his choice and it was his journey and something that I couldn't fix. But as a child, you always think, and I mean, it happened when I was older, but it was still like, as a child of his, it's like, you think, did I do something? Could I have changed something?
Yeah.
Could I have done something to keep him here? But then I think about the while in therapy, I'm like, no, that's something that he had to figure out. But again, I hate that because in our community, at least in the African American community, as a man, you're not supposed to talk about your feelings. You're not supposed to talk about how you're not supposed to say, oh, I'm getting help or I'm figuring this out. It's like, it's frowned upon. It's a big X. And I'm not talking about Twitter.
Sure.
But but it's, what I mean? It's like, you don't talk about that. And then, and when I lost my stepfather, which sadly he was sick, and it was someone I was more connected to and more, close to as well. And you lose these important figures in your life and you start thinking like, is it me? Am I the problem? But obviously sickness, you can't change that. That's life, but you start losing those things. I think when he died, my mother went to therapy and then I went back to therapy. And I think we both kind of did healing through that. And it was very helpful and it made our bond a lot more stronger too. But I think
good.
You got it. Sometimes you realize, you don't even think about this. I think about it this way. If I didn't do it, I feel like I could be a lot worse. I put it that way. I could be on drugs. I could be addicted to anything else. I could be out in the streets. I could just I'm all about sex positivity, but I think there's a level of safety with having sex. But there are people I've seen who go a little rampant and a little crazy. And it's like,
oh, sure.
It's, hey, do what you want to do and be happy, but let's be safe at the same time, So it's hard to think about what could have been if I didn't take the steps to realize, what, this is maybe stopping me from moving forward or helping me understand people or understand myself in a process. So because of me just going there to be able to talk, it helped so many more things. It helped me understand and put perspective things that my father's suicide is not my fault. My stepfather dying, it's not my fault. Because I have such a hero complex where I feel like I have to fix everything. It's the nerd in me. But it's just like, you can't save everyone. You can't save every aspect of life. You have to be able to save yourself. But also, I went back to the idea of like, I want to inform people and let them know it's okay to go get help. It's okay to talk about it. Because I'd rather you do that than you either self-harm yourself or you hurt someone else.
Right. Right.
That's the most important part to me.
It's why we need to become comfortable being uncomfortable.
Exactly. Wow. That's a good full circle right there. I love that.
You know what? Somebody ought to make a podcast using the phrase similar.
Someone should be the way to go. But I'm not laughing about mental health, but I did. Sometimes you probably have to, but I think it's taking that approach to being okay with that and being okay that and not shaming it. And we shouldn't shame anything at these levels. We shouldn't shame. If you want to identify as whoever you want to identify as, and go ahead and do it and let the world know. But also let the world know more about you and what you have to offer. And getting help could be so great and it could be so reliable and it's so much out there. It just takes a small level of research and talking to the right people to get the help you need. And I think sometimes people are scared to do that, but it's out there. People, it's out there. You're not alone. You are definitely
not pathologization.
Alone. Yeah. You're not alone.
We are afraid of being labeled sick. If we get labeled, and I mean, I think this plays into, I know we're running low on time here. You can cut the Rollo May story from earlier, but
no, I love that story.
But it went on too long. But like gender dysphoria, I think is a very, it's a very big topic to the transgender community, but I think gender dysphoria is actually a huge component of social reinforcement. I mean, it's how we end up learning social roles.
Yeah.
But when I have brought up to people, what you experienced there was gender dysphoria. I've had some people respond very violently. So, well, no, that's for those weirdo transgender people. That I would not get gender dysphoria because I'm totally secure. And it's like, look, don't.
It's like, sure, Jan, calm down. Calm down.
It's like, cool, but depression, whatever, like anxiety, fear. There are reasons why we feel these things, but we want to pathologize them because supposedly we're not supposed to. Wait, whatever. I was a crappy way of saying it, but we're not supposed to be. Yeah, we're not supposed to be afraid. We're supposed to be happy. We're not supposed to go into situations and go, I'm anxious. Why not? Why are these pathologies? These are normal human experiences, and if we feel them, we should process them. And that's what therapy exists for processing some of these things that really, I think this comes down to insurance. We pathologize for the sake of getting health care as opposed to being well. Yeah. So I'll kick my soapbox out of the way.
No, I love that. Well, Emmy, it's been amazing talking with you today. Where can people find out more about you, any projects you're working on, learning more about you and your story? Where can we find you?
The best place to look, so my personal website, if you want to follow me on any social media stuff, it's Amethysta.io. And then where all of my professional work goes now, so all of the podcasts that I record, all of the articles I write, those go on a website called genderidentitytoday.com.
Perfect.
And for what it's worth, we accept contributions. So if there's anybody who wants to write about gender or identity, by all means, reach out to me because I'd love to publish your story as well. That's, that's my dang mission. And there we go.
Love it. Well, thank you again for such a great talk. And people, like I said, there's help and there's avenues for everyone to feel accepted, loved, and respond to. So my final message to you is to stay well, be you, be your most authentic self, and don't give a fuck what people say. Honestly, just don't. Just don't. Do
Perfect.
You. Do you.
Perfect.
All right, Ami.
I'll give you the heart.
Love it. All right. Hope to talk to you soon. Thanks again.